All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Brett, and this is Talking Cloud.
Hey, and I'm Travers. And are we finally in the 20s?
We're in the 20s. We're actually 21.
Oh,
Yeah, I know, eh? That.
that is
Now we're
exciting.
working. Now I guess we're working to what next milestone?
Yeah, 50? Is
50?
that the one that counts?
Yeah, I guess
30 would be pretty good.
30 would be good. Yeah, I'll be happy with 25. It was going
Yeah.
five increments at a time. That would be all right. Um, is let's call it the special long weekend edition. It's
Oh, yeah.
Thursday instead of Friday, which is really confusing my brain today. We were talking about earlier on. I kept thinking it was Friday. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, and I get
Well, you.
yeah, I'm extending the long weekend, so I'm getting an extra long weekend, which gotta say I don't really feel that bad about.
Yeah, I guess that.
No, no, I'm not going to complain about it a whole lot. Probably what's going to happen is we'll finish this
Yeah.
and I'll look out the window and it'll be gray and rainy. And then it'll be nice and gray and rainy till about the same time on Tuesday.
Yep. Sounds
Yeah,
about right.
pretty much it. Pretty much it. We're gonna change up the order, and what we're gonna
Mm,
do is we're gonna leave the movie segment and to the end.
gotcha.
Yeah, just to throw it all like just change up the flow of stuff. So let's just jump right in and talk about some AWS updates
Right into the
from the
cloud.
previous week. Yeah, right into the important stuff and we'll I don't no, I don't want to play my hand. We'll just quiet on the movie update. All right, so here's the first thing. Amazon S3 will no longer charge for several HTTP error codes. Um,
That's good.
Tell us the backstory of this one.
So this came up. There was a blog post that came out, I think it was 2 weeks ago, where someone had inadvertently set up a public S3 bucket that shared the same name as the default public S3 bucket for an open source tool. Now, they were pretty vague about the details, but what happened was any failed API calls to this bucket were accumulating charges in the account. So the guy was getting billed for rejected GET requests on this bucket. So thankfully, they've patched that.
Yeah, you know what? Like, how long's AWS been around?
Yeah,
2000 and
something like that.
kind of surprised it hasn't come up before.
No kidding. I guess you just had to stumble into the wrong bucket at the wrong time with the wrong configuration, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
then suddenly you have clients from all around the world trying to ping your bucket because it's the default.
And
Bad
you
luck.
get. Do you remember what the bill? Like, it wasn't insignificant, was it?
It was like 5 grand, something like
Really?
that. Yeah.
Which
I
one
think
do
you
you
got it
think?
refunded by
Yeah,
support, but
he gets the mulligan on that one. Well, and you think about it, if you had a $5,000 S3 bill, that's a lot of S3 activity. Like, I know it
oh
was
yeah,
mostly API calls at that point. We're not talking about storage. We're talking about
right.
volume of API calls, which actually, when you think about it, it means that there's a ton of activity hitting a bucket in their
Oh
account
yeah.
that is unauthorized for anybody else to use, right?
Yeah, it's like thousands of a cent per call, right? So
You got a lot of
that's a lot
calls.
of API calls.
That also means it's a pretty popular open source tool, whatever it was.
Yeah, I guess they're doing all right.
It does
Congratulations on whoever you were.
whoever you were, your number one open source tool.
Yeah.
A couple things came to mind
Mm,
when this first came out, like a couple weeks ago, when people were writing articles about it. And I know this is not a fix for this, but it kind of reminded me of a couple things. The importance of budgets,
yeah.
right? So that you can try to at least not get a surprise at the end of the month, like where the hell did
Yeah.
grand come from? So setting up budgets, I totally know that's not a fix for this. Obviously, this is an issue on the AWS side. However, you might get a little bit of a heads up and try to figure out what's going on. And then
Right.
also, the other thing that came to mind is pending some sort of random character string to the end of every bucket that you ever create is probably
Yeah.
not a bad.
It's good practice because you never know because the namespace is shared across the region, right? So
Isn't the
you have to watch out
namespace
for that.
shared globally? I thought
Mm,
S3 namespace was global.
mm,
Regardless,
it's one or the other.
yeah, we got a 50-50 chance, right?
Yeah.
Regardless, using, appending some sort of unique suffix. I always have to think of that. It's like, is it a
Yeah.
prefix or a suffix? It's a suffix in this case. Adding some sort of unique suffix to the end of your bucket name can't hurt, because again, it just makes it a little less likely that out of the blue somebody is going to suddenly start hitting your S3 bucket when you didn't expect it to.
Yeah.
And CloudFront, if you're a CloudFront person, CloudFront will do that for you automatically if you don't put the bucket name in the property definition, right? It concatenates the stack name together with a couple other things and then jams a suffix on the end of it. So you don't have to think about it too much there. I think we could talk about randomly generated resource names for an entire episode about people have strong feelings about that.
So yeah.
All right, so that's S3. Not much else to say about that. How about this guy? We talked about Amplify just last week, didn't we? We talked about a
We
new
did.
release of Amplify Gen 2, and now there's
Yep.
a CLI update that is really important. So why don't you walk us through this one?
Yes, so they published a fix for this vulnerability, but there was an issue with the Amplify CLI where you could hijack AWS credentials. So they've added a mitigation to SDS, which is the security token service, and now at least that this vulnerability does not exist anymore in the CLI.
So if you're running Amplify along with the CLI, either on your workstation or maybe inside of a CI/CD script somewhere or something, you would want to make sure that you're running, let's just simplify it and say the most current version of that CLI just to make sure. Got some long weekend patching to do.
Yeah, make sure you upgrade to 12.10.1 at least.
12.1. Okay, perfect. So that's that guy. This one caught me a little by surprise. So here we've got VPC Flowlog extends support for Amazon Elastic Container Service ECS.
Yeah, I saw this.
Thought this would have, if you had
right?
Flowlog with containers running in the VPC where Flowlogs were configured, I would have thought they would have achieved that, but I guess not.
You would expect so, right? This is for both EC2 and Fargate, though, and Fargate has dedicated networking on the AWS side.
Oh,
so I
of
wonder if
course.
that's the difference.
Yeah, maybe. So flow logs, if you're not familiar, are kind of, I often say there's three big issues that we see in almost every VPC we ever look at or review for a customer. It's public resources that don't need to be public. It's security groups primarily. Not a lot of people are really using NACLs, but security groups, open security groups to the world, right? Whether you're allowing all traffic to any port or all traffic to a particular port. And then the third one is lack of logging. And when I think about lack of logging in VPCs, it's low logs.
Yeah.
And I just find this, I put low logs right there with CloudTrail as sort of one of the most important logging services that you should have running in every VPC that you have, because great troubleshooting, like we use it all the time to help us identify if there's a network access control issue, if there's a security group issue that's blocking that traffic because you're just going to clearly see it. But it's also great we have customers that use it when they need to record this network traffic for compliance reasons and stuff like that.
Absolutely.
It's enabled. So, again, this is kind of like something that I was a little shocked when you shared it. I was like,
oh, really? They didn't have it? But now you can sort by service name, cluster name, and they're including ECS metadata in the flow logs as well. So should make it easier to parse out your container workloads.
That's always handy. And then the other, speaking of flow logs, is if you're running transit gateways, remember the transit gateways.
Oh, yeah.
A flow logs configuration. So if you've got those gateways running, you should have, I guess it's still called just flow logs, right? Is it?
Yeah, it should still be flow logs.
Something like that, whatever they call it. Yeah. But you should enable that logging there too. So there's a nice little update. Next up is AWS IAM Identity Center adds PKCE-based authorization for AWS application. So just more authentication.
Yep, more better authentication essentially. So now Identity Center supports OAuth 2 using code flows based essentially. And PKC stands for Proof of Key for Code Exchange, and it's a standard for OAuth. And now you can use that to get access to your AWS applications like Q Developer Pro. They highlight here, but presumably most other applications as well.
So another acronym you can remember too now.
That's right.
So
Yeah.
okay, perfect. Not really much to say about that one either, right? It's just kind of, I don't know if it's what I would call like quality of life, like we
Well,
life sort of date. It's just it gives you another option. Right?
it's more like an essential security update, right? Because there's some older flows that you can use for OAuth that are vulnerable. So this helps you make better choices.
Perfect. And then finally, we've got there we go. Customer managed keys, the MK support for event buses.
Right.
What do you think?
So it's interesting. I mean, EventBridge is one of those services that it has a KMS key AWS provided by default, right? Most services do, but if you are a company or organization that has requirements for compliance, that you manage your keys, you have control over rotation, then this is another service that maybe if EventBridge wasn't accessible to you before, it is now, and it's quite useful for building serverless applications. So something to look at.
Yeah, I kind of had the same reaction to this one. You know, it goes along the lines sort of on the same theme for the VPC flow logs, just being able
Yeah.
to use a customer managed key like this for another service just gives you, as you said, more control over the key, but it also gives you additional logging. You've got through CloudTrail, you're going to have all the API activity logged,
Yeah.
got compliance there as well, and you're going to hopefully write those CloudTrail logs somewhere to meet your logging requirement. And yeah, just to your point, it opens up a service if you have those kinds of managed
Mhm.
key requirements. Now you can use this, and for me, it's almost like a EventBridge is sort of a go-to solution if we're thinking about building some sort of serverless event-driven application. Uh,
Yeah, it's
it's
kind
just
of the go-to.
yeah, sort of almost what's the phrase that they like to use? Table stakes almost now for
Right.
driven stuff, right? It's kind of what I always
Yeah.
think about.
Yeah. And there might be some implications. Sorry to cut you off. There might be
Oh
some
yeah,
implications for cross-account access too that you can leverage now. Uh,
oh yeah, of course, because you could give EventBridge if you had an event bus in one account, you could give it access through key policies and IAM policies to a key that exists that you're managing in a central account or something like that.
right. So
I
something to
guess
think
there
about.
would be cost
Yes.
implications here too, because now you're paying for the key, right? 'Cause you're paying
Yeah, you,
for every CM key, and then you're paying for the
you pay
API
for API
calls.
calls to the key. Yeah.
Yeah. So as we say a lot of
Watch out for
times,
that.
yeah, it took the words right out of my mouth, right? Always understand the pricing models for all of this stuff before you just say, hey, let's turn this on, because like our buddy with the S3 bucket at the very beginning, nobody likes a big bill at the end of the month when you're not
Yeah.
expecting it. You're just like, what did I do? So
That is the worst kind of surprise.
yeah, I would think, if I was to like uh, order, on worst type of surprises in AWS to least uh, worst type of surprises in AWS, I would say the larger than expected bill is right on the top, because usually
Yeah.
that's going to really pick somebody off, and you're going to have to try to figure out what the hell went wrong.
Yeah, that's the nightmare scenario, right? For most people using AWS.
Yeah. And that goes back again, right? Budgets are your friends. At least that way, you're not going to get surprised, what, about the third or fourth day in the month. When you get the bill from the previous month, there's nothing you can do about it. If you set
Right.
those budgets, at least then you're going to kind of get a heads up before another 15 days goes by, as an example, and you're still accumulating those costs, right? So you can start
Oh yeah.
getting into it. And the other thing, totally off topic now, what they called anomaly detection and costs.
Oh yeah.
Another option here to just kind of give you a heads up if they notice something a little strange. Although you got to be careful with anomaly detection. We have it turned on in a couple accounts, and I'll get an alert every once in a while when we spend 2 cents, because yesterday I spent half a cent, and
Right.
We've got it set up as percentages. So you might
It's
have to,
relative to your
yeah,
spend, right?
you might have
Yeah.
to fiddle around with that a little bit to get it to sort of what makes sense for what you're trying to do. Perfect. Oh, you know what? All this cost talk made me think of something else. This this is also where you might it's going to increase your costs, ironically, but you could use maybe something like Kudos to
Yeah.
get a nice picture of everything too, just because we're chatting about cost. So that's also a really great little AWS solution that you could dump into an account and chew through all your what do they call them? Curve reports, right? Cost usage
Yeah.
reports, and give you nice quick site visualizations and stuff. So that's kind of
Yeah. It's a good dashboard tool.
perfect. All right, so let's transition to the Gen AI segment of the
Oh
show.
boy.
I don't know about you. We were talking before we went live here, and I kind of had this week. I kind of thought this week with called Google Connect, Google I/O,
Yeah.
and then the OpenAI release. Kind of thought we were going to get inundated with stuff.
They kind of suck the air out of the room, it sounds like.
Yeah, I don't know. I was expecting just to see so many things, and I
Right.
kind of thought everything I stumbled across. I'm not saying that the releases. I want to specifically talk about the OpenAI stuff,
Mm.
but not to say that the releases weren't interesting. I just thought a lot of the follow up stuff, and I said to you earlier, felt more marketing than anything. Like there wasn't a lot to
Yeah.
immediately go out and start trying. At least from my perspective, that's not
Well,
what I thought.
yeah, once we get to the OpenAI stuff, we can talk about the Google stuff too. They buried the lead on a lot of interesting updates they released. So there's some tidbits in there I want to pick at.
Did you notice that that I just realized I had like two pairs of reading glasses? I was using one pair and I had another pair. I feel like I'm 70. I'm just wandering around collecting reading glasses everywhere. I'm
You
like
never know.
blind with these things. Anyways, okay, off topic, but let's get back on track. Here's another survey about the future
Mm.
of AI. And if you remember, if you tuned in last week, we talked about the GoDaddy survey of
Right.
sort of micro, very small businesses and how they were using AI. This, I can't remember, this is a big report. You can download the PDF,
Mm.
38 pages of a lot of numbers and survey results. There's lots of interesting things here. I thought we were not going to go 38 pages, so I thought we could just talk a little bit about the finding.
Yeah.
What you're going to see here is the finding echo, I think, in a lot of ways, what we talked about last week from GoDaddy, which I thought was actually kind of interesting. So,
Hmm.
micro business, what did we say? I think it was less than 10 people
Yeah.
in GoDaddy. And this one here, I can find it now quickly. I should have made a note as I was doing this. I thought of it at the time and I was like, oh, it'll be fine. It tells you in here, it was like, I want to say it was just over 30,000 organizations or 30,000 individuals replied, and I won't be able to
Oh
find
yeah.
it now that I want it. And they tended to be on the larger size. Oh, here we go. 31,000 people across 31 countries. I thought thought somewhere in here there's sort of a general size here, but my main takeaway from this is, like I mentioned already, these results echoed very much what the GoDaddy survey said, at least from my
Right.
perspective. What do you?
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like most knowledge workers are now have at least tried AI and are not admitting to using it. It seems Microsoft has found the same thing.
think?
So we're in this strange transition period where people are applying in their work, but maybe worried about getting repercussions for using these tools at their jobs, which is interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, it reminds me, and the other big thing, somewhere in here, there's another acronym for us to think about now:
Mm.
BYOAI. So bring
Mm.
your own AI.
Okay.
And reminded me a lot of early days of SaaS,
Yeah.
where companies were like, hey, this is cool, but you're not allowed to use it because we don't have policies in place, right? So what
Mm.
people would end up doing is throwing their own credit card onto services because they wanted to use
Right.
those services. and corporate was taking too long to say you could do it. It sort of in this survey, it feels very similar in the fact that organizations realize that they need to embrace this stuff, but obviously there's all sorts of issues around can they do it. So
Right.
increasingly people are just using AI tools, whether they're sort of approved or not, which I thought was interesting and reminded me a lot of early days of sort of those early days of SaaS tools, even the BYOL days when people started showing up with their own hardware and plugging it into corporate networks. And like,
Right.
yeah, yeah, interesting. The other big takeaway that I saw in here, and I've got sort of actually I lucked out. I'm on the right spot. While most leaders agree that AI is a necessity, the pressure to show immediate ROI is making leaders
Right.
move slowly, which is again what we talked about last week, right? How do we actually say that spending money on this stuff results in a return on our investment, meets our requirement?
Yeah, it's tough, right? I mean, it's hard to measure, and there's a jagged frontier, like we talked about before. Like these technologies are not 100% or not perfect on every task you give them, but they're generally pretty good on most tasks. And it's going to be hard to measure that across an entire organization. I mean, I guess that will kind of come out maybe in like productivity metrics over the next couple of years. You'll see companies who have it and companies who don't. I'd be curious to see if there's like a difference in even share price for companies who've embraced it and companies who don't.
Yeah, maybe, maybe. And actually, that's a good segue into this little piece here. Um, Users say AI helps them save time, 90%. It helps them
Yeah.
focus on their most important work, 85%. Be more creative, blah, 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 blah. Um, yeah, like, I don't know. I think organizations might have a different take on sort of what are they seeing for reductions in time and stuff like that to get things done versus an employee's
Right.
perspective on it. So I think also trying to how do you accurately measure the fact that something
Yeah.
does take less time because you're using an AI tool. I think that probably open to debate. And the other thing here, the second point, I thought this was interesting. And I know this is specific to Microsoft, right? Because they're talking about Teams, they're talking about
Yeah.
Copilot, but they're saying that the heaviest users of the Teams users summarized 8 hours of meetings using Copilot in the month of March. That's an impressive number. I would flip it on around a little bit though and say, so what? Like,
Are you ever going to look at those notes?
it's cool to say, summarize this for me and spit something out, but it still comes down to what are you going to do with that summary?
Well, you know what you do is you feed it back into a model and you can ask it questions about what was talked what we talked
Again,
about. Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. In the end, it comes down to action, right? Uh,
Right.
yeah. So I don't know. I kind of thought of that when I was reading through this, and then the other thing that sort of mimicked what we saw in the other survey from GoDaddy was that somewhere in here it says that organizations are looking for people with AI skills. And
Yep.
we're not talking about people who understand how to build custom models and all that kind of thing. You know,
Yeah.
obviously that's an important skill. At least at this point, the way I interpret this is organizations are looking for people with any type of skill, like how to
Yeah.
use these tools. So this is again, if you wanted to get ahead of this, I think it's really a key moment in time to make sure that you are using these tools, whether it's work or personal, investing
Yeah.
the time and effort to get comfortable with them and figure out how best to use them because people are looking for those skills. It
Yeah. You
makes
want
you more
to
marketable.
learn a little about prompt engineering, try to host a model somewhere.
Yeah.
That's going to help you out a lot, I think. One thing that's kind of interesting is if people are hiding that they're using AI, are they also sandbagging like their tasks too?
Mhm.
That's one thing you got to worry
Yeah.
about with these
Yeah.
productivity metrics as well, right?
Yeah, maybe,
Yeah.
maybe. I think it's
Kind of
telling
wonder.
that people are using it, but not
Yeah.
telling anybody you.
Yeah.
To me, and we talked about this last week too, right? Is and we haven't talked about it in a while. I haven't stumbled across the doomsday article in a while that everybody's going to be out of a job.
No.
Although when we get to the OpenAI thing, I do want to talk about one of the demos that they did. But you know, obviously, and I think even in this survey, they do mention that people are leveraging the tools, but concerned that the tools will take their job. Um,
Right.
and I think that goes back to make sure you know how to use these tools. And I think in the long term, you will obviously never be guaranteed of a job, but be in a much better position maybe than somebody that's less familiar or unwilling to use these kinds of things.
For sure.
So I really like this. I would say if you're interested in sort of state of the union type things, state of the industry, grabbing this whole 38 pages, it's not the most engaging reading in the world. You want to make sure you've got a good strong coffee with you. There's lots of
Oh
numbers
yeah.
they throw at you, which I think is a good way to give us some solid idea of what's happening. But the 38 pages is well worth a read.
Agreed.
Let's see here. What else do I have? Yeah, okay, here we go. We want to talk about this one? Yeah, let's talk about this one.
Okay. Yep.
So why don't you walk me through what OpenAI at a 50,000-foot view did this week?
Okay.
Earlier this week.
So extremely high level view of this new announcement. So they released a new model, GPT-4 was it Omni?
Yeah, I don't know. I just keep calling
I
it
think
an
it's
O.
Omni because it's everywhere. But
Okay.
it's essentially what it is it's a multimodal input, multimodal output model that they released for free, and it has extremely low latency for generating results. So what that means is you can record video on your phone, you can talk to it with an almost real-time conversation, and you can tell it to generate multiple outputs. So you can get a picture or a text result or a voice result for what. So what they do is they walk it through a bunch of use cases, right? They tell it to help someone tutor, pick out some differences in some videos, like am I presentable, basically, for an interview, for example. Oh, you've got it on your phone right now. He's holding
Yeah,
it up to the
I've got it
camera.
on my phone, right? Oh, yeah, I forgot this podcast later.
Yeah,
Audio only. Yes,
audio medium.
I you just know what I'm doing, right?
Yeah.
I have not tried voice yet on this thing, but
Oh yeah.
I will tell you that that idea of multimodal, I wandered around my garden
Yeah.
yesterday afternoon with my wife, and I immediately put this on my phone. I wanted,
Oh yeah.
and I wandered around the garden taking pictures of things in the garden and asked it to tell me what this is, right? And
Yeah.
asked it for care instruction for different plants in the garden.
Oh really?
I was shocked isn't the right word. I was actually surprised at
Hmm.
how well I think it did. Now, obviously, we talk all the time about hallucinations and being careful with what
Right.
comes back, but there were a couple specific plants in the garden that I knew what they were, and I kind of
Yeah.
knew general care instructions. And without even prompting, I took a picture of it and I said, "Tell me about this plant." And it said, "I think it's this. Here's
Hmm.
why I think it's this. And here's how you should care for that plant." And
Wow.
both my wife were like, "How are you doing that?" And I'm like, "I don't know. This is the future." Um,
Yeah.
mm, Pretty incredible. So I'm interested. I haven't tried the voice yet because I think you know what? I know they're just rolling some of this out over time. I don't
Mhm.
think I actually had the little headphone icon until while you were talking. I wanted to check. I don't think it was here.
I don't think it's generally available for voice usage yet. I think they're rolling that out, like you said. But yeah, the demos were really impressive. They had, do you remember the Google demo where they had a assistant book an appointment for you?
Yes.
They did the same thing in one of the demos. It's buried here somewhere. But they had two of these GPT models booking, one acting as like the secretary or called like a personal assistant agent, right?
Yeah.
So, and then they negotiated that transaction.
Did you also hear the one they had? One, and this goes back to the Doomsday article.
Oh yeah.
Mentioned we haven't talked about it in a while. They had another demo, two phones. One was acting on behalf of the customer to return an iPhone, and
Oh
the
yeah.
other was the agent, sort of on the other side, that was basically taking care of the return. And
Right.
these two phones talk back and forth. And my wife and I sat there and listened to it. It was wow. And somebody posted, and I know, hot takes are always the thing that gets the engagement, but the comment was something like, there are, I'll make a number up 'cause I can't remember, 30 million people in the US
Yeah.
employed in customer service right now. 20 million of those people will lose their jobs because I don't know. You know what? Again, the crazier you can make something sound, the more engagement you're
More
going to
clicks you're
get.
gonna get, right? Yeah.
But I know this will all kind of, but when you sit and listen, and I would assume you had sort of had the same experience listening to the sort of the booking agent
Yeah.
example. You listen to these things go back and forth. I was kind of thinking, I would use that service. Like, I don't
Yeah.
want to sit on the phone if that agent can do all of that work for me, and the organization that you're having your ChatGPT to talk to is okay with doing
Yeah.
that. I think that's a win. I don't know.
I've Yeah, me too. And I'm kind of feeling like it's gonna depend on how the organizations handle the rollout of these agents, right? If you roll them out in a way where they're using them to empower the productivity of your average customer service worker, I could see not that huge a reduction, and maybe the job transitions to something like you're managing a fleet of agents who are fielding calls, and then you get escalated to the people who insist on human interaction or the actual hard to resolve customer support
Because
calls.
that goes back to something we talked about weeks and weeks ago,
Yeah.
right? The Air Canada story where
Yeah.
telling you get a discount and you're going
Weird.
to honor that. So again, there's still some hard
Yep.
stuff here that's going to have to happen, right? Okay, I'm going to try a little demo. So I've
Okay.
got the voice here. Whoops, there we go. Okay. And it's asking me to choose a voice. Let me turn the volume up.
Oh boy.
I don't know what this is going to do.
This
So
is
I have
exciting.
yeah,
Real
here we
time.
go. Real time. I have a bunch of different choices. I have no clue what any of these means. Okay, so or mean. So choose a voice.
Oh, what are a couple?
Trees, juniper, cone, sky, or ember. I have no
Oh,
idea. Okay, hold on.
Got a really great feeling about it teaming up. I jump in and help.
We're going to talk about this in a second too.
Thrilled I am to work with you, and I can't wait to get started.
yeah,
I'm hoping the mic is picking this stuff up enough.
it is.
Excited about teaming up with you, and I'm all set to dive in. So how can I make your life easier?
Already ground running. So, anything you'd like me to focus on first? Just
Okay, we're going with this one. So I'm going to
Mhm.
confirm.
Okay.
So while we're using the app, so it's asking me kind of when can ChatGPT record the audio. So I'm going to say while using the app.
Right.
Am I going to allow it to send me notifications? Sure. All right. So connecting, it's listening. All right, let's try it. I just bought myself a Japanese maple. I'm pretty sure it's a blood gold maple. How do I best care for it?
Nope. It's polling.
choice. Japanese maple.
Okay. So that was like what, 10 seconds?
1. Planting location. Choose with partial shade. They prefer morning sun and afternoon shade. 2. Soil. Ensure the soil is well draining and slightly acidic.
Could you make that sound a little more engaging?
Oh yeah, the tone shifts.
More engaging thing. Caring for your new blood gold Japanese maple is a rewarding experience. Here's to make
Oh.
sure.
I think, you know what?
Yeah.
I think this is going to be pretty incredible. And look, it gave me, again, for those of you that watch after or listen after,
You get the transcript.
I've got a transcript of what Ember just told me, which I think is actually an interesting segue into the Wired article that's up on the screen right now. And the Wired article is, hey, this is all cool. Got a Flirty upgrade. And there's a
Yeah.
comment in here about how up until this point, AI tools in general were meant to not be human-like, right? And
Oh yeah.
how there are already concerns, and there's references in this article that there are already instances where by making an AI tool more human-like, being able to adjust the way it speaks to you, that's going to make it more addictive.
Yep.
And there's a very short reference. I didn't dig into it a lot here, but where I think it's right at the bottom of the article. Let me pull it up. It's just like one line. Right here, a British man pled guilty to breaching security at Windsor Castle, saying that a chat bot he had exchanged more than 5,000 messages with, encouraged him to do so. So I think it's interesting because it's, this is voice. This is voice like on the Echo.
Yeah.
It's nice to hear a human voice back, but I think there are also lots of downsides, potential downsides.
There can be, right? I think people are really wired for getting really attached to anything that's remotely human, right? So it's gonna be very strange. There's all these like what a huge business is gonna be AI partners, right? Like how that will
I
affect
think in
society,
this
I don't
article here,
know.
they talk about services already existing to get yourself
There are, yeah.
like an AI partner, boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever you would like, right? And I guess those services are probably going to get even more realistic with these types of advancements. So it'd be interesting to see what happens here with this.
Yeah, that's gonna have all sorts of mental health implications, right?
So I've been using the new model. The first time I tried voice, which I think is really cool. I'm going to try it this afternoon. I'm going to try to ask it some other stuff and see what it does. I've been using the model for all of our post processing, and it's something that I want to write up at some time on what we do. But the idea of what we do with all of the recordings and the transcripts and things like that from podcasts that we do, the live coding sessions that we do, all of these things, right? And
Sure.
I don't know if it's hard. Again, it's very subjective. I would say I think it's much faster than 4. When I enter the prompt, it's much snappier. Like it's giving me a response right away. And I think we talked about this a while ago. I put my foot in my mouth a little bit about sort of feeling like you're talking to a person versus a bot. And I would say again, it feels less like a chat bot and more like it's a person that's responding back to you. The way it's structuring its responses. I think this is just the first step. Like, it's off, you're just going to see every other provider do the same thing. Have to. I think.
And they built it into the voices, right? They're all very helpful sounding, keyed to be the ideal personal assistant for whatever you might be looking for. Is kind of what it sounds like to me. Yeah. The crazy thing about this that I couldn't believe was they released it for free, essentially. Like I think anyone can access this, right?
Yeah.
So
I haven't looked into it a lot, but I think you're right. I'm pretty sure they said this is available to anybody. And then there is a difference if you pay them $20 a month, but I don't know what is the benefit to being a subscriber versus just doing it for free.
Probably context window, number of API calls, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But just to release that to everyone, they must be pretty confident in what they're cooking up.
And I also think it's probably a great way to hopefully have people that say, holy crap, this is awesome. To get these extra features, whatever it might be, we should look into.
Yeah.
I'm willing to
it's
give
good
them
marketing
$20 a
for
month,
sure.
right?
Yeah.
Let's just get them started and, hopefully become a paying customer at some point. Do you have anything else you want to say about 4.0?
Not really. Not besides like Google also had a big event this week and they released a bunch of features that are pretty similar. So, but it kind of got overshadowed.
Let's talk about that a little bit because they do have the bottom of the Wired article here. They have a one paragraph. Hey, Google is set to unveil a bunch of things as well. Now my phone is listening to me. Hang on. Turn everything over. Everything's listening to me. Why don't you walk us through, because I agree with you. I think it really did get overshadowed. And why don't you walk us through sort of some of the highlights that you saw?
Okay. So, I mean, things at the Google I/O they announced, there's 1080p AI video generation. What was the other? There's 2 million character token context windows available for Gemini. And then they also released a live low latency convo with Gemini walking around a room. So kind of similar features. I think these are all potentially kind of emergent from the multimodal model design pattern that we're seeing these companies adopt. But yeah, so they basically announced very similar features, but just not to no fanfare.
Yeah, isn't it amazing how they just seem to be
They're just kind of behind, feels
behind?
like.
Feel like they're behind, right? Like
But they're still,
when AI gets ahead of them by 2 days,
yeah,
kind of thing. Everybody's talking about the new model there, and the rest of it is just unworthy of talking about. It seems strange to me.
yeah. Like if they had done this a month ago and announced it, they would have it would have been amazing. They would have blown everyone away, right? But
It's kind of like the Friday afternoon politician news brief that they hope goes
right,
away by Monday, right? Kind of
yeah,
not so great for Google. The one thing that I saw, and I didn't actually see, my recollection of what I saw in the I/O event was there's two things I want to talk about. The first thing
yeah.
is the actual content. Thought
Mm.
they did some walkthroughs of what I'm going to call a Gmail agent. Did you see that?
No, I didn't see the Gmail thing.
Okay, so again, like very specific, where sort of similar to what they were demoing with the OpenAI thing, where you've got an agent talking to another agent, sort of thing. They were
Right.
showing examples of how you could essentially, I'm going to call it an agent, but I haven't.
Yeah.
This is another thing, and this is what I was mentioning before. A lot of it felt like marketing, and I'm like, okay, well, how do
Yeah.
I go find out about this? And I was having a really hard time trying to find real information. So I hope I'm not misinterpreting what I saw, because it was only a little kind of quick little. But what they were showing were demos of people in Gmail where they were
Yep.
saying, okay, I need to return this product. And it would go through the return process for you based on what was in your mail. And it would do the outreach and all that kind of stuff. So a lot of sort of agents sort of working with some of the existing Google tools, which to me makes a ton of sense. But I couldn't
Yeah.
find any real stuff. I had a hard time finding.
Well, we'll talk about holy grails for personal assistants, right? Is be able to parse your email and
Oh my God.
act accordingly based off of that or your inbox, right? But yeah, no, I didn't notice anything. But I couldn't find the page for that.
No,
I did notice that search now has a Gemini summarization on Google. Like
Yeah.
if you go to Google something, you'll get an AI summary of what you're seeing. So that's interesting. So it seems like they're gonna pump it into all of the entire suite from the sounds of it.
You can get that on LinkedIn. Have you noticed that now on certain LinkedIn
Oh yeah,
posts? You get the little takeaway things at the bottom.
LinkedIn's so weird. Yeah,
It's weird. Isn't it? I'm trying it on our website just to see how it works. So we're going to
Yeah.
talk about prompts here in a second. But one of the things that I do is I've got a series of prompts that I use for all the post processing, as I mentioned. And one of them is
right.
give me 3 key takeaways in one sentence each, and I'm feeding them in now to the website to highlight things. I want to see. I don't even know how we'll ever measure it, but it's really kind of interesting on how quickly it's taking the highlights or the main point in every bit of content that we create and summarizing it into 3 key points. I was
Right.
pretty impressed, and it's only going to get better from here.
Yep.
Cool. So speaking of prompt,
Oh yeah.
I love this artist. This is fantastic. So we've talked about prompt engineering before and the importance of
Yep.
understanding how to prompt, and this article I think would say something like, this isn't to say that prompt engineering isn't important, but I had a good chuckle when I read this last night. Basically, the article says, if we asked you how best to prompt, in this case, I think the example was Meta's open source Llama 2 model. And we're going to ask you to effectively generate a prompt to solve 50 equations. How would you do it? And the next thing is, whatever you decided is wrong. And the article then goes into a study that talks about how unusual really effective prompts are when it comes to some of these different models. The fact that the way we think about things is extremely different than how an AI, a model, might sort of best react. And they go through examples they're here, right? They basically say, if you pretend to be in a Star Trek episode or a political thriller, depending on the number of questions that you ask the AI to answer, it'll give you better answers. And they give you some examples here. I won't read the prompt, but I'll share the article. But literally acting like you're in Star Trek would solve 50 math problems better than a person who's trying to come up with an effective prompt. However, once you get above those 50 problems, you have to change to a political thriller style prompt in order to get the best result.
It says you have to give it stakes, I guess. The prompt include the life of a president's advisor hangs in the balance. You must now concentrate your brain at all costs and use all of your mathematical genius to solve this problem. That's incredible. So you have to give it stakes in order to deliver.
Just down a little bit, and it says there's no single magic word or phrase that worked all the time.
Yeah.
At least not yet. But there's been multiple studies that that suggest getting better outcomes, promising to tip your AI, tell it to take a deep breath, tell it to use its emotions. Like it's strangest thing to think that you could get a better result by promising to tip an AI that has
no need possible use of that.
Probably even, I'm sure it understands what at least the definition of a tip is, but obviously, how is that ever going to work? So essentially, and I pinged you last night when I read that.
Yeah.
Essentially what this article is saying is some of the best ways to create prompts is to ask the AI how to create a prompt.
Right.
So there goes your prompt engineering jobs.
Yeah.
I mean, they're already gone.
Well, short-lived.
Yeah,
Party's
there's
over.
only been 2 people ever hired in the history of time as a prompt engineer, and they're like, uh-oh, I tried this last night. Do I have it here? I can pull it up really quickly. Probably.
That's like
Give me one.
It makes sense, right? Take the language machine and tell it to generate a language chunk that helps the language machine work better. Is essentially what's happening here.
It, right? So let me see here. Okay, so this is fantastic. I'm using ChatGPT 4 to do this. I didn't try it in any of the Bedrock models. I ran out of gas last night and needed to get a couple other things done, so I didn't get to it. Here's my original prompt. Create a prompt that you would use to create show notes for a podcast. The prompt should create engaging but concise summaries of the episode and highlight the key takeaways for that episode. This is the really interesting part. What it gave back to me would actually an outline that you could use for a podcast. So it said, okay, here are the hosts, here are the guests, here's the summary, here are the takeaways. So I was like, I said to Karen after, I'm like, this is probably something that we should use to help us prep the pod. So if you see a new template in email very shortly, you know where it's. It wasn't.
If the show notes look a little different.
Yeah, it looks a little different. So then I wrote back. Oh, hold on, Alexa. Alexa, stop. I wrote back and I said, I gave it some praise. I said, I love this, but you misunderstood me. I'm asking for you to create a prompt that I could use with a Gen AI tool like yourself to accomplish the goals that I mentioned earlier. And then all the pieces fell into place. So gave me a prompt. It's like, oh, I get it. Here's a prompt that you could use with Gen AI tools, blah, 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 to create what you want. And it gave me a prompt. And here's what the prompt is. Create show note for my podcast episode. The show notes should include an engaging summary, key takeaways, episode highlight, memorable quote, action steps for listeners, and a call to action. Here are the details for the episode. And then it gave me sort of like, this is what you would kind of expect to feed into it from the episode. And then it broke down all of the detailed prompts. So it gave me a prompt for the summary. It gave me a prompt for the key takeaway. Today, before the show, what I did was I took another transcript because I wanted to see what would happen.
Yeah.
Like expecting me to put in, it gave me 7 different detailed prompts for summaries, takeaways, highlight, action steps, the whole list. And I'm like, okay, well, does that mean I have to type in 7 prompts against the transcript? And I'm like, okay. What I did was I took the transcript, which is a text file, I uploaded it to ChatGPT, and I said, I used the very first sentence. I will read it again. The create show note
Uh-huh.
for, and these are all the things that I want. And it
Yep.
did all of the detailed prompts for me and spit
Nice.
everything out. It gave me a full list, engaging, memorable quote, a summary. Oh, and I adjusted it a little bit because we post all this
Mhm.
onto the website. So I said, I also want I can't remember exactly how I structured the question now because I changed it a bit, but I basically said, I also need a page title, a page
Yep.
summary, and a page slug so I can post this on the website.
For a blog post or
For
something
a
like
blog
that.
post, yeah. And it bit all of it out in a nice little summary that I could then take and I adjust it like, trust but verify kind of thing.
Yeah.
Some of it feels, you can tell a computer wrote it. So I kind of run through it and do my edits and stuff. I'm
Sure.
shocked at the idea of using a prompt to basically say, create me the most effective prompt for what I want to do. And it worked
Right.
perfectly. It made my workflow 100 times easier than what I was doing before. Because I was madly cutting and pasting a bunch of prompts back and forth.
Right. Yeah.
Each things without
Much better
realizing
to
that
get
you
it in
could
one
do
go.
this. Yeah, one go did everything. So
Yeah.
yeah, use your AI tool to ask it for how it expects you to talk to it to get the best outcomes. And it seems, obviously on a very small scale, as I was shocked
You might
at how good
be
it was.
pleasantly surprised. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
kind of funny
Like,
that you can,
create your incomes or your outcomes.
yeah, you could do like erecting context matters so much in
Mhm.
terms of how to use these systems, right? Like even just the scaffolding of a Star Trek situation, there's a lot of baggage that comes with that, right? Like there's a chain of command situation and there's the implicit stakes that you apply to that scenario. And yeah, you kind of do the same thing when you ask it to generate a prompt. You're like acting as someone
Yeah.
trying to generate, the best possible prompt.
Yeah, you always say, I always think context. You're a marketing expert,
Yeah.
you're a sales expert, but I never kind of thought of the idea of promising it or
That's that I don't know about that one. Yeah.
it's but if you give me a good answer, like what?
Oh,
Or, yeah,
wow.
okay, excellent. So yeah, this is
Size
pretty
loving
interesting.
electrons.
Yeah, the other thing that I thought was interesting in this article though was they said, hey, this is really interesting stuff. However, while prompting does matter a lot for most use cases, it's really not going to affect like if you're just using it occasionally, it's not like you
Yeah.
need to really sit down and kind of really hammer out these things. But
Figure out what you're trying to.
yeah, I just thought this was a really neat article. And then when I
It's
tested it,
very interesting.
yeah, really cool. Really cool. One more thing here, and this kind of goes along with the earlier comments that we were talking about with OpenAI and it sort of feeling more like a person. So this is
Right.
an article from CDC that talks about as AI becomes more human, experts are concerned about the responses that it provides back. We won't go into this article because I think it's very similar to what we talked about already, but I'll include it in the show notes. Just the fact that once it becomes more human-like, it becomes more addictive, and there's obviously going to be challenges around that as it
Right.
become more personable.
Yep. People should be concerned, and we should be thinking about ways to minimize what are the risks of this technology too, right? So
Absolutely. Okay, so that is the Gen AI section. We've got a couple. I've got one housekeeping item. I don't know if you
Mhm.
have anything, but I just wanted to
I don't.
remember that we're doing the Gen AI webinar May 30th, 1 p.m. Eastern.
Right.
So what's that? 14 days from now. And
Yep.
I'll make sure in the show note and in the newsletter that go out Monday morning that we include a link for that so you can join us there. It's a 100 level intro to running Gen AI workloads on AWS. So it'd be great if you stop by. And movies. Let's wrap with movies.
Oh, right.
I
I forgot
cheated.
you.
I cheated.
Oh, you did.
I totally cheated. As we were talking, I was like, watch the
Were
movie
you
for
Googling?
no, I was
that's
asking ChatGPT. No, I was like, because we were talking about the fact that all these AI tools feel more like humans now.
Yep.
Her is just, it's a great movie anyways.
it's a perfect recommendation
Yeah, just kind of
for this week.
along a theme. So have you watched anything
Yeah.
that's been interesting or plan to watch anything?
Well, no, I'm coming live on an undisclosed location in the United States of America, so I don't have any movie recommendation. Mind you, I did have one on my list called 100 Beavers.
100 Beavers. Okay.
Yeah, it's an indie film, Canadian film about a woodsman who has to like find his way home in the woods, and there's 100 beavers, and they're all played by people in mascot suits. So,
Oh my God.
that's all I can really say about it. I haven't seen it yet. I want to see it. So,
I started laughing because of that other one, the Sasquatch one.
oh yeah,
Remember?
Suburban Sasquatch.
Urban
Yeah,
Sasquatch. Yeah. I don't think
I
I ever
don't
made it
recommend,
through that one.
but I do recommend it.
Yeah. It's an interesting movie. So awesome. Well,
Terrible.
terrible. Yeah, terrible would be a good way to describe it. But so bad you kind of got to watch it.
You kind of got to watch it.
Kind of like
Yeah.
Killer Sofa.
Kind of like Killer Sofa. Oh,
Yeah. When a recliner starts biting your fingers off, you know you got troubles.
oh yeah, that's
Yeah,
dire.
You're in for a bad night. All right. Well, if there's nothing else, that is the long weekend edition of Talking Cloud. We'll be back next week, as always. Actually, change of scheduling, though,
schedule.
right? So we're gonna embrace summer hours after the first official long weekend in Canada. So we're gonna be doing this Thursday afternoon now instead of Friday afternoon because we're gonna try to make ourselves scarce on Friday afternoon. So we'll see you next
Right.
Thursday instead of next Friday.
One day sooner.
One day sooner. You get all your important news one day sooner.
That's right.
All right, folks.
Right.
As always, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week.
See ya.
Bye.